Hello, everybody. So glad to see you all here today and joining us for our event. It's great to have you all here, and this being a Zoom webinar on this day when we remember the death of the martyrs, and we come together to remember them and also to think about El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua today, and the danger that they are facing because of the Hurricane Iota. So we have all of them in our hearts today. We are so glad you can join. This being a webinar, you can't see everybody who's attending, but let me tell you, there's 88 people attending. But one way that you can kind of get an idea of who's here is I'm going to ask you all to participate in a poll. And so if you don't mind answering our poll, we want to know where you've come from. And while you're letting us know that, I just wanted to let you know that I've seen so many attendees. Many of them have been our past speakers for CLASA. That's the Carney Latin American Solidarity Archive. I'm the director, Gail Presby. And we have Tom Gumbleton joining us. We have Dean Stoken from the Mercies with us. We have Ephraim Brammer, University of Michigan. Adrian Aron, who's a good friend of Nacho. And Richard Stollerschulk from EMU, Rick Cassidy, a big supporter of our events, Bill O'Brien, Tim Redigan, they've all been our past attendees. Okay, so thank you. I thought we were going to have people from all these other places too, but so glad that we have a strong showing from US and Canada. And like the Mariposa, the butterfly, we are in solidarity with, oh, have you not seen the results? So we are in solidarity with those, and I happen to know Mary Anne, she's in Mexico, even though like she's from the US. So I know we have people in Mexico and people in Nicaragua and Honduras joining us in this call. So thank you all. And I want to see if I can find my second poll. No, I can't. I had a more interesting poll to show you, but I cannot find my second poll. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And I wanted to give a shout out to people from so many different organizations. We have School of America's Watch. We have Wayne State Latinx Student Association. We have EMU. We have the Interreligious Task Force, Chicago Religious Leadership Network, Catholic Worker Akron, Gray Panthers, Task Force of the Americas, Hands Off Honduras, St. Mary's in Ann Arbor, Xavier University, International Samaritan, South Bay Sanctuary Covenant, California, Episcopal Church of the Incarnation, Congregation of St. Joseph, Glen Mary Home Missioners are among our attendees. And I want to thank you all for joining. And I also want to thank the co-sponsors for our event. And Language and Cultural Training is one of our co-sponsors. Without their help, we couldn't have gotten Dr. Tizziana Carmona and her students who will be doing their presentation for you. And I also want to introduce Katie Franklin from the International Student Office. Would you like to say hi to folks, Katie?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Katie. I'm from International Services Office, and I want to welcome you all, and I'm happy to be co-sponsoring this during International Education Week.
Okay, thank you so much. And I also want to thank our Office of Mission. And we have Catherine Punsalan Manlimos and the Office of Mission, who are co-sponsors for our event. And I want to thank her and her office for, and Catherine, would you like to say something? I've allowed you to talk if you unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. It's such a privilege to be able to co-sponsor this wonderful event and the celebration of the Salvadoran Martyrs. Thank you, Gail, for including the Office of Mission Integration in this work.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your support. So we're very anxious and happy to begin our program. Let me just give you an overview. We are going to start with Father Joe Mulligan. He is going to give his presentation on the UCA Jesuit Martyrs and an update about the recent court case in Spain that's in relation to the martyrs. After that, we will have our performance of witnesses to the martyrs with all of our student presenters. So, and then we will have Q&A for both Father Joe Mulligan and the presenters at around halfway point, around 8 o'clock. Then we will move to the second half of our programming, and we will have Jose Artiga from SHARE Foundation, and he will speak, and he will introduce Padre Melo, who will be calling us from Honduras, and Amy Argenal. And then we'll have a Q&A for them. So that's an overview of the evening. So let me just begin by introducing Father Joe Mulligan. Thank you so much for being here with us now. And Joe Mulligan, who has been in Nicaragua for over 30 years, but is a Jesuit from our province here. And he is also on the advisory board of CLASA, and he's an annual speaker for us. He does work with Christian-based communities in Nicaragua, and he also works with those with physical challenges and disabilities. He does a lot of really important work in Nicaragua. And you have a lot of fans here, Joe, a lot of fans in Michigan. We can't see you because of coronavirus. We don't know when you're visiting next, but we sure are glad to see you on this Zoom. So let's all welcome Joe. And Joe, begin your presentation. We look forward to it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gail. It's wonderful to be involved. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to say hello to all my friends and some relatives in Michigan. Great to be involved in this celebration, really, because we're celebrating the love and the courage and the commitment of the martyrs. That's why we celebrate martyrdom, just as we celebrate the death of Jesus, because he was a prophet, because he spoke out against injustice and evil. He was put to death, executed. But we celebrate those kinds of martyrdoms because they are expressions of great love. So I would just like to begin with a personal note. When we first heard about the horrible assassinations in El Salvador, of course, at the UCA, the Central American University, the Jesuit University in San Salvador, the capital. I was here in Managua, and we were getting ready to go over, and we went over to the US Embassy to join a protest against US military aid to El Salvador. And when we got to the embassy, we found out that that US military aid had, to a certain extent, resulted in the killing of 6 of our Jesuit brothers and 2 women, whom I will describe a little later. It's not that the US was totally responsible, but the US, as we'll see in the slideshow, was considerably responsible, because the US was supporting the military regime with all the horrible crimes against humanity that it had been committing for so long, all during the 80s. The US had been supporting them with military training and equipment and all kinds of political support. So anyway, we we went there and we learned what had happened when we got to the embassy. And then we organized a larger demonstration in the afternoon. And then several of us from Nicaragua went to the funeral, and it was really quite shocking to see first 8 coffins lined up in the chapel. Now you'll see 6 of them because the 2 women were taken to their hometown for burial. But it was all extremely horrible and shocking experience for us and for everyone. So let me begin with the slideshow because I have limited time. Now, Gail, can you give me, it's 6:13. How long do I have actually? I have what, 7:13 your time, and 6:13 here. How long? Whoops. I think you're
Yeah,
on
Gail,
mute.
you're muted.
Just, well, anyway, I'll just go on. She can give me a
It's 20
signal.
minutes. So I will send you a personal chat that will pop up on your screen when you still have 3 minutes. How's that?
Okay, very good. Now I'm seeing my picture kind of jumping here on the screen. It's not, is that the way it is for you? But as long as you can hear my voice, I guess that's all right.
Yes, we'll just do the best we can. It's
Okay.
jumping a little, but you're still with us. Don't worry.
Okay, and the slides will not be jumping. So let me see if I can get the slideshow on. There we go. Okay, how's that? Can people see the main slide sufficiently well? You see the main slide all right?
Yes.
So this is a little commercial here if you want to get this PowerPoint, so you don't have to be frantically writing down all this material. Just send me an email and I'll send you the PowerPoint, okay? I'll also have a little commercial at the end for some of my videos on YouTube, which are about various aspects of the martyrdom at the UCA. So what I'd like to do in the limited time that I have is, first of all, what happened, basically, and then who were they and why were they killed, essentially, and then to finish up on what we consider a positive note, a small victory for justice in the case that a Salvadoran ex-colonel was convicted on September 11th. He was convicted in a court, the national court in Spain, of being involved in the murder. So we're encouraged by that. We would like to see justice happening in El Salvador as well, which has not, but at least this was one case that resulted in some truth coming out and justice being done. He's in prison in Spain. So first of all, to get a look at the hemisphere, and you can see where El Salvador is, a very small country, but with a large population, so very densely populated El Salvador, part of Central America. So on November 16th, 1989, we had the assassination of the 6 Jesuits and the 2 women. The 2 women were Doña Elba and her daughter. Elba was a cook working at a Jesuit community in El Salvador. She wasn't working at the university, but she and her daughter were on campus and they decided to stay there, and everybody thought it would be safer for them to stay on campus that night, because it's important to realize in what context, sort of military political context, this assassination happened. The FMLN, which was the revolutionary group in conducting guerrilla warfare and so forth, they were very active militarily all around San Salvador. So it was under a state of siege, martial law had been declared. So it was thought that they would be safer by staying on campus rather than going home, which was a few blocks away. But it turned out to be just the opposite, because the order came down from the high command of the Salvadoran military, René Ponce, the chief of the high command, kill Ellacuria and leave no witnesses. That's why they were all killed. kill Ellacuria. He was the target, the main target. The military hierarchy did not have any great liking for the other Jesuits either, because one was the head of the Human Rights Institute at the university, and others were prophetic in their own way. But the main prophet was Father Ignacio Ellacuria. He was the president of the university, leading theologian and philosopher. Philosophy was actually his main field, but and he was promoting, and he was very influential. He was promoting a negotiated solution to the conflict. He was not promoting the victory of the revolutionary side. He was promoting, because it had been going on for almost a whole decade. And so he was promoting a negotiated settlement. And the military extremists knew that he had the ear of the president, Cristiani, and they were not interested in any kind of negotiated solution of the conflict. They wanted to wipe out the revolutionaries. So this was the scene. I didn't see this myself. As I said, we got there for the funeral, but I had something to do with bringing these pictures to the US. There are some of the martyrs. I believe the one in the white robe is Father Ellacuria, and behind him in the blue shirt is Nacho Martin Baró. It was just a horrible scene. They were fired at, they were killed with heavy weapons at very close range. The military unit that was there on campus that went in, about 26 soldiers went in to carry out this assassination, and they just literally blew their brains out. Some people see some symbolism in that. Some people interpret that as meaning that the military, the high command, wanted to wipe out the intelligence of these people, because that was a critical intelligence. They were using their minds and their university to criticize the status quo in El Salvador. This is where Elba and her daughter Selena, 15 years old, Selena, were killed. They were killed because the order was to leave no witnesses. So when the soldiers finished shooting the Jesuits at close range, I don't know if Elba and her, maybe they had opened the door, or somehow the soldiers found them, and they just blew them away at close range. So this was the scene with the 6 coffins, very impactful scene. But as I said earlier, first there were 8 coffins, but then the 2 women were brought to their own hometown for burial. In the middle there is the US ambassador. He was at the funeral, and yet, you know, he was there at the funeral, and yet the US was partly responsible, considerably responsible for what had happened, because the US was heavily supporting the Salvadoran government and military with special training and special equipment. Archbishop Romero, I think we'll see in one of the slides, well, a little later, I'll say it now. Archbishop Romero had written to President Carter at the time, saying that military aid to the Salvadoran government was only causing more suffering, more death in El Salvador. Please stop, please, President Carter, stop the US military aid to my government, is what Archbishop Romero was saying. He was not listened to, and the aid continued and was actually increased. Now, you might say, why were these Jesuits prophets? Why were they critical of the status quo? Why had they taken an option for the poor? Well, this is a very powerful, very clear statement of the responsibility of all Christians to work for justice. You can read it yourself. Really appeared to us as a constitutive dimension. I wish they used the word like essential or something, but all right, constitutive dimension, or in other words, of the church's mission for the redemption. There, the word redemption is being used in the meaning of liberation, and it's liberation from every oppressive situation. This was the Synod of Bishops in Rome in 1971. This was picked up. Can you see that? letters are kind of light. Can you see them? Well, this was a statement in 1975 of our religious order, the Jesuits, 1975. The mission of the Society of Jesus today is the service of faith. Well, that's what all religious orders are about. Everybody knows that. Of which the promotion of justice is an absolute requirement. That's something new in a sense, at least the explicit emphasis on that. For reconciliation with God demands the reconciliation of people with one another. So this was an important motivating statement for the Jesuits of El Salvador, and really for all of us, of which the promotion of justice is an absolute requirement. Now, the assassination of the Jesuits at the university came at the end, really, of a number of years of attacks on the church, attacks on church personnel, on catechists, on priests, on sisters, and perhaps the most famous case was the March 12, 1977 assassination of Father Rutilio Grande for supporting the right of peasant farmers to organize. He was not with the armed revolutionary group, he was nothing of that, but he was supporting the right of the peasant farmers, his parishioners, to organize. And so his case, or cause as it is called, is in the works now. It's making some progress towards beatification. And then, of course, in 1980, the assassination of Saint Oscar Romero, again, for being a prophet, for speaking out against the injustice of his society and for speaking out against the excessive violence and repression by the military of his government. There's a quote from his letter to President Carter. I think this is important for us in the US, people in the US to understand. You can just read that for a moment. So that's what I mentioned earlier, that that's what he had said. He was not listened to. The response was not positive. The aid actually continued more strongly during the decade of the 80s, which ended up with these killings in 1989. So as I say, the military aid continued, and that's how the US is very much involved in this crime against humanity that was committed in 1989. And then, of course, shortly after, just months after the assassination of Saint Romero, we had the assassination of the 4 US churchwomen. You can see their names there. The first 2 were Maryknoll sisters, Dorothy Kessel, Ursuline, and I put the name of the movie. It's just the most moving film that you could imagine, about Jean Donovan, the lay missioner. She was not a member of religious order. She was a lay missioner. It's a beautiful film, Roses in December. I recommend that very highly. And there's a picture of the 4 women brutally murdered. Why? Because they were helping the refugees. And the government thought that among the refugees who were fleeing from the war zones were probably some revolutionaries, and that these sisters were subversives because they were associated with these refugees who were coming from the areas where the FMLN fighting forces had their considerable presence. They were not involved with the FMLN in any kind of military way, of course. So now, who were the martyrs at the UCA and why were they killed? There's a picture of the 6 Jesuits, Armando Lopez at your upper left corner, Armando Lopez. There's Ignacio, Nacho, people called him, Ignacio Ellacuria, the president. And as I said, the main target, okay, kill Ellacuria and leave no witnesses. That was the order. Segundo Montes was the head of the Human Rights Institute at the university. So an obvious target as well. And then on the second row down on the left was the only native-born Salvadoran in the group. The other Jesuits were Spaniards, naturalized Salvadorans, but Lopez y Lopez was a Salvador. He was not working at the UCA. He was working with a network of Jesuit grade schools and high schools, but he was killed as well because the order was to leave no witnesses. Nacho Martin Baró had studied at the University of Chicago, sociology, and Juan Ramon Moreno Pardo. So those were the 6 Jesuits, and the 2 women, Elba and her 15-year-old daughter, Selena. Let's just take a look for a moment at Father Ellacuria, the president of the Central American University. I mentioned he was a philosopher, theologian, very well known, highly respected as an intellectual, and very influential. He had a great public presence in El Salvador. That's why the right-wing extremists wanted to get rid of him, because, as I said, they thought he had the ear of the president of the country.
5 minutes, Joe.
Huh?
5 minutes.
Okay. So as I said, he promoted a negotiated settlement of the Salvadoran Revolutionary War. This again was, of course, one of the many verses of the gospel that motivated these people. And here's something for university interest. As a Jesuit university, our universities also have a commitment to work for justice. His first name is Inocente. Well, he's anything but innocent. Inocente Montano, he was convicted in Spain of being responsible, being involved in these murders. And that was a long process. We're very grateful to the people who were involved. The Center for Justice and Accountability was the key organization in bringing that case to the national court in Spain. And so it was, again, a significant victory for justice in this case. And so I think that, I don't know, am I about at the end of my time? I put the slides back on for a moment if you like. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know. Well, we'll worry about that. So that's basically a summary of the case. I think that atrocity had a large international impact, and people say it had something to do with actually bringing the war to an end eventually. That because it was such an outrageous attack, not that it was any worse than the slaughter of literally thousands of peasants, campesinos, catechists, men and women, throughout the whole decade, but it was so atrocious, and it gained so much international publicity that people say it did have an impact on actually almost forcing an end to the war, and then ultimately a peace agreement, and that at least a stop, putting an end to the armed conflict. Again, I just, at the end, I say I have my several videos about this on my YouTube channel, which is, I'll try to get that on the screen somehow, but it's Joseph Mulligan 1, the numeral, the number 1, and it's all together, Joseph Mulligan 1. And you can see, I think most of the videos are in English, but some are in Spanish about this case. So thank you for listening to me. It's been great to be part of this, as I said at the beginning, a celebration, because it's a celebration of their love and their courage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Father Mulligan.
Welcome.
Thank you. And we are going to have a Q&A session
but can you just tell me what it was?
It's long, but yeah, it's Father Mulligan. From our experience at the UCA in discussion with locals, they're the forces that caused the assassinations. Reportedly, a special unit of the Salvadorian army were reportedly on U.S. soil less than 72 hours before the attack. It's important we don't minimize the U.S. involvement in this atrocity. From photos I've seen, the two female martyrs were hiding behind the bed before they were shot.
Right. Well, that's a very good point. These were special forces of the Salvadoran army. I believe a group of 26 soldiers, special forces of the Salvadoran army, who had received training from the U.S. I believe some of them maybe had been in training in Panama, so that's how it would have been on U.S. perhaps in the Canal Zone. I don't know, but they were trained and supported and heavily armed by the U.S. So that's how the U.S. was involved. And that was not a unique case. I mean, if you study the history of U.S. involvement in Latin America, you will find that what characterizes U.S. government involvement throughout Latin America was its counter-revolutionary, at least during the 70s and 80s, its counter-revolutionary policy. That is, the U.S. would support almost any government, no matter how guilty it was of massive violations of human rights, as long as it was trying to repress any sort of socialist revolution. So that's sort of a key to understanding U.S. involvement, at least in Latin America and as well in other parts of the world as well.
Thanks so much, Joe, for that question. You'll have more opportunity to ask him questions in the future. And in hoping that most of you are securely reconnected, what I want to do now is introduce to you Tizziana Carmona. She's a Spanish instructor in the Language and Cultural Training Program in our College of Liberal Arts and Education here at University of Detroit Mercy. She was a Fulbright Laspouse Scholar, which is an international education and cultural exchange program to individuals from Latin America and the Caribbean for graduate study in the United States. She's also a former professor in the department where Father Martin Barreau, SJ, was chair at the Jesuit University, Universidad Centroamericana, UCA, in El Salvador. And the Detroit Mercy students speaking this evening are Professor Carmona's students from Introduction to Spanish 3 and Intermediate Spanish 1 and 2. So, Professor Carmona, can you just say hi briefly, and then I'm going to ask your students to do the same?
Hola. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us. It's a pleasure for my students and I to be here.
Thank you. And Elisabet, would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Elisabet Enriquez, and I major in business administration.
Okay, thank you. And Emily?
Hello, everyone. I am studying business administration at UDM Mercy.
Great. Joshua?
Hello, everybody. I'm Josh. I'm studying cybersecurity here at UD Mercy.
All right, thank you. Mitchell?
Hi, I'm Mitchell. I'm studying architecture at the University of Detroit Mercy.
Okay, Noor?
Hi, I'm Noor and I'm a biology student.
And Paige?
Hi, I'm Paige and I'm studying business administration here at Detroit Mercy.
And Reece?
Hi, I'm Reece and I'm studying biology.
Okay, thank you all. And Mary Anne Perrone, you're the one who put together this script from the words of the martyrs and translated them into English for us. So can you please say hello, and we can all thank you for putting together this work, Mary Anne.
Hello, hello to everyone, many friends out there. I would just like to say that 6 years ago, preparing for the 25th anniversary of Elba Celina and the Jesuits, I wanted to create a vehicle to show us and remind us of what these martyrs stood for and why they were killed. I searched for words that they wrote or they spoke, and in some cases what they might have written or said that carry the spirit, something of the spirit of who they were and who they still are. Their deep love and their struggle for justice live on in these words and in us. It was a labor of love for me, and I'm honored that the UDM students are presenting it tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now I am going to try to share my screen. I think I can confidently say our slideshow is up. So please, Tizziana, please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Gail. I wanted to share with all of you the drawing that this year the University Centroamericana, no, the UCA, is using to celebrate the martyrs, you know, their lives and their contributions to humanity, and to remind us the importance of social justice to all of us. And this is the first quote. Todos los cristianos debemos ser personas volcadas al servicio de Dios y de los más necesitados. Amando López. Next, please. Next, Gail, please. Thank you. La verdad de las mayorías populares no hay que encontrarla, sino que hay que hacerla. Ignacio Martín Barón. No insistas en que te abandone y me separe de ti, porque donde tú vayas, yo iré. Donde habites, habitaré. Ruth 1:16, Celina Ramos. No es tiempo todavía de cantar victoria por la vigencia de los derechos humanos, pero tampoco es tiempo aún para la desesperanza. Segundo Montes. Next. Next, please.
I'm trying.
Si tus proyectos son para 5 años, siembra trigo. Si son para 10, siembra un árbol. Si son para 100, educa al pueblo. Joaquín López y López. Debemos cuestionarnos permanentemente y traer a Dios a nuestros actos diarios. Juan Ramón Moreno. No se regocija por la injusticia, sino que se regocija con la verdad. Todas las cosas las soporta, todas las cree, todas las espera, todas las aguanta. El amor nunca falla. Primera de Corintios 13, del 4 al 8. Elba Ramos. ¿Cómo hablar de libertad en un pueblo donde lo que predomina es la esclavitud a la pobreza? Ignacio Ellacuria. And now we're gonna start the play. It's called Witnesses for Justice in Their Own Words. Original violence is a structural injustice which violently maintains through economic, social, political, and cultural structures the majority of the population in a situation of permanent violation of human rights. Those are my words, and speaking out like this resulted in my own murder and the murders of the others. My name is Ignacio Ellacuria, known affectionately by my Jesuit brothers and friends as Illacu. I am the president of the University of Central America, the UCA, a priest, a philosopher, and a theologian. I am regarded as having made a significant contribution to liberation philosophy, which focuses on liberating the oppressed in order to reach the fullness of humanity.
Father Ellacuria helped write many of Archbishop Oscar Romero's pastoral letters. After St. Oscar Romero's murder in 1980, he became one of the best known and respected public figures in El Salvador. As part of this work, he organized a nationally televised open forum at the university, which systematically analyzed and critiqued the right-wing government and military. He used his position to condemn injustice and promote a negotiated peace settlement to the civil war that took the lives of 75,000 Salvadorans.
For this, I was killed.
We fell because there could be no witnesses.
I'm Ignacio Martin Barro, known by almost everyone as Nacho. I am the deputy president of the university and a social psychologist internationally renowned for my studies of the effects of war and the repression on the civilian population. I am best known for pioneering what I call liberation psychology, my own proposal of what political and critical social psychology should aspire to be.
Nacho has such a great love for his adopted land of El Salvador and devotes himself to people's hunger for justice and liberation. On weekends, it is his joy to be priest to the people of the poor parish in a rural village of Hayaque. His concern for the poor is evident in all his academic and priestly work.
For this, I was killed. Por eso me mataron.
Fell because there could be no witnesses.
My name is Segundo Montes. Because of my big red beard, the people often called me Zeus. I'm superior of our Jesuit community here at the UCA, the head of the sociology department, and director of the newly opened Human Rights Institute. I work every weekend with the poor in Quezaltepeque. Both my research and pastoral work is devoted to the refugees who have fled the repression and horrors of the Civil War into camps in Honduras. I visit the camps often.
A group of returning refugees founded a village and named it after him, Ciudad Segundo Montes. He tells the truth about the plight and suffering of the refugees, los refugiados.
For this, I was killed. Por eso me mataron.
We fell because there could be no witnesses.
I am Amanda Lopez. I teach theology and philosophy at the UCA, and I am a counselor and an advisor to many students and alumni. In the past times, I was the head of the seminary in El Salvador and of the Jesuit University in Managua, Nicaragua.
Padre Melo works in a poor shantytown parish in Soyapango on the outskirts of San Salvador, witnessing to the poor and the working for justice in his own quiet, unassuming way.
And for this, I was killed. Por eso me mataron.
We fell because there could be no witnesses.
My name is Juan Ramon Moreno, better known by my nickname Pardito. I'm assistant director of the Pastoral Institute at the UCA, secretary of the Jesuit province, and teacher of novices. I was also instrumental in developing the library at the Romero Pastoral Center of the university, and I've just finished computerizing the library's catalog of justice and peace-related works.
Padre Ramon Moreno set up the Jesuit seminary in San Salvador and is an expert on Ignatian spirituality, leading retreats for students and religious communities. His charisma is preaching. Although somewhat self-effacing, he catches fire when he speaks in public and has become strongly persuasive. His approach is along the lines of liberation theology, preaching how to ground social commitment in spirituality and faith.
For all of this, I was killed. Por eso me mataron.
We fell because there could be no witnesses.
I am Salvadoreño. I am the only native-born Salvadoran among us 6 Jesuit priests who were killed, and I am the oldest. My name is Joaquin Lopez y Lopez, always called Lolo. I am 75 years old now and semi-retired. Although I was born into a rich family, owners of a coffee plantation and famous dairy, I left home and all of that at an early age to join the Jesuits and become a priest. Education of the people is my passion and my mission. I am actually one of the founders of the UCA. Perhaps my greatest legacy is the launching of the Fe y Alegría educational movement in El Salvador. a national program that provides literacy education and skills training for the very poor. 13 schools, 12 workshops, 8,000 students, and 2 clinics that serve 50,000 clients is for me an immediate response to one of El Salvador's most pressing problems, the lack of education. Un problema importante es la falta de educación.
Padre Lolo is a man of very few words and fairly timid. He has none of the charisma of a university professor, but is quite an impresario of education at a more popular level. He is known for self-denial and austerity in his personal life, with an affinity for used clothing and other second-hand stuff.
Already a man condemned by a recent diagnosis of prostate cancer, they killed me anyway.
We fell because there could be no witnesses, no testigos.
I am Alba Julia Ramos, 42 years old. I work for the Jesuit community along with my husband, Abdulio. I'm a cook, and Abdulio is a gardener and a handyman. I started working for the Jesuits at the new Theologate, cooking and cleaning. I was there from the start, and through me, my husband got work as a guard at the UCA. Padre Armando Lopez knew me from the Theologate and had the idea that a small family was needed for the guardhouse at the UCA, and he suggested us. Our family of 4 moved into the guardhouse in July of 1989, just 4 months before the massacre.
At the Theologate, we known Alba as discreet, as loyal, discreet, and intuitive in spotting signs of distress in others' faces. At times, she would speak poetically, using metaphors, giving advice to the person she thought she was feeling down. On the day before she was killed, she washed her best dress, a black one with a pink flower design. For a woman who had taken refuge in the Theologate from the bombing, she was going to give it to her the next day.
I was killed so that there would be no witnesses, no testigos.
My name is Selena Maricet Ramos, and I'm 16 years old. In 1989, I'm in my first year of a high school commercial course. I received a scholarship, and every so often, I have to show my grades to the lawyer who gave me the scholarship. Because I needed to concentrate more on my studies, I had to give up basketball and band, a sacrifice for someone as active as I am. I also had to interrupt my work as a catechist because of my schoolwork and responsibilities. I have a boyfriend. We've been together since I was 14. He plays basketball on the school team. We have been talking about getting married, but we don't know yet what my mother will say. We plan to break the news to her in December. I was murdered in the arms of my mother because we could have told the truth about who had murdered the Jesuits.
We are people of the gospel, a gospel that proclaims the reign of God and that calls us to try to transform this earth into as close a likeness of that reign as possible.
We must approach the situation of those for whom we must become good news. And to approach is to enter into their painful reality, to let ourselves be moved by the brutality of their wounds. It means entering into this culture of poverty. It means suffering the impotence and outcast condition of indigenous people, the despair of drug addicts, the bitterness of mothers who weep for their children who have been snatched away from them.
We moved around so much as a young family. I met my husband picking coffee in Santa Tecla. We lived on the plantation, but the owner died in one of the first of the very violent kidnappings, and so we left in 1970. We moved to Hayake, where my husband looked after someone else's farm and also grew some corn and beans. I helped him with that. It was there that Selena was born. She was our third child. Really, I had already had 2 babies. The first, a little boy who was a stillborn, and the second, another boy who died shortly after birth. After Selena, another boy arrived, and he is still alive.
We are not really an undeveloped country. We are an underdeveloped country. We are weak in resources, but we could feed ourselves if we needed to. We are really a feudal country. The American economic solution to our problems is good for America, but not for us. El Salvador cannot go on like this. El Salvador no puede. The reason is the immense population and lack of resources. 60% of our people are underemployed. 30 to 40% are unemployed. 700,000 are displaced. A free market trickle-down, privatized economy like that of the U.S. will not work under these circumstances.
Looking for a better life, we moved to Aclahuta, where we had to leave in 1979 because of the violence that destroyed my husband's source of work. We moved back to Santa Tecla, where we rented a little house that was essentially a box with a dirt floor and a curtain down the middle.
The great numbers of people and the maldistribution of resources to them has the result that very few have so much. Many have so little. It is these injustices that have been generating something uncontrollable, the war. We've had 10 years of being at war with 70,000 killed by the violence.
I consider it a duty to work for human rights. It is the duty of every human being who has a sensibility and sensitivity to the suffering of people.
The root cause of fighting here is wealth distribution. If the real wealth of our country was distributed equally, rather than having so much more than the many, then there would be enough for all. But the government kills its own people when they cry for bread. They are called communists when they organize because they have no food.
UCA has to promote the liberation of Salvadorian society's consciousness. Once this consciousness is liberated, it will promote change through the creation of a new communal power, a cherished goal.
Remember, there is no conversion to God if there is no conversion to the oppressed.
If you want your project to last for 5 years, sow seeds to grow wheat. If for 10 years, plant a tree. But if they are to last for 100 years, educate the people. Edúcalos.
The vocation of the Church and of the followers of Jesus is to be the innermost recess of Christ's compassion.
Any attainment of democracy in El Salvador depends on respect for human rights, respeto a los derechos humanos, including socioeconomic rights, the right to food, education, medical care, work.
We've been fighting very hard just to keep the university not only open, but effectively working, doing what we consider under those conditions very significant academic work in favor of a solution, looking for a solution to those terrible problems of our country. In your country, it is publish or perish. In ours, El Salvador, it's publish and perish.
What have I done? What am I doing? And what will I do for the crucified peoples of the world? We must take them down from the cross.
We sometimes talk of leaving, but our hope is not leaving, not in leaving. It is here, aquí. If I leave, the crisis will stay. Here, I may be able to effect change.
Back in the early 1980s, when the killing of priests was so terrible, I thought of leaving the country. Several of us here at the university talked about leaving, of seeking freedom in the United States or Spain. But we decided, there was a saying, how can we be really free if our brothers and sisters are not free? This is my country and these are my people, mi gente. We here are not just teachers and social scientists. We are also parish priests, and the people need to have the church stay with them in these terrible times, the rich as well as the poor. The rich need to hear from us just as do the poor. God's grace does not leave, so neither can we.
In this world, we have to pay un precio, a price, for taking on the cause of the poor, a price that is not a matter of funds, but of sharing the same lot and fate, by way of contempt, oppression, and repression. But what is important for our church and for our religious institutes? That the powerful of this world look on us approvingly and support us, or that we be a ray of good hope, good news for the despised of the earth.
Spirit breathes in many ways, and supreme among them is the disposition to give one's life for others, whether by tireless daily commitment or by the sacrifice of a violent death.
I have not received a death threat for some months, but they will come again soon, I am certain.
On the night of November 15th, 1989, I placed a phone call to my sister, Alicia, in Spain. During the call, she asked me, "When are things going to improve in El Salvador?" And I answered, "Oh, many people have to die before that happens." Just a few hours later, I and others were killed.
We stayed at the Jesuit residence at night because Padre Melo thought it would be safer than the guardhouse. We slept in a small room next to the Jesuits' dining hall. I was killed that night alongside my daughter, my body wrapped around Selena's, trying to protect her from the shooting.
The order from General Ponce that resulted in the Jesuit massacre was to kill Father Ellacuria and leave no witnesses.
Do everything so that liberty is victorious over oppression, justice over injustice, love over hate.
Oi, today, the first thing we must do is let ourselves be evangelized. Accept the good news of the merciful goodness of God, and let ourselves be shaped by it to the point of making our own mercy its manifestation and channel. This means conversion to the poor and oppressed, conversion to our brothers and sisters, conversion and reconversion go forward where merciful love continually grows within us, leading us to an ever greater commitment and identification with the poor and their cause.
The developed world is not at all the desired utopia, even as a way to overcome poverty, much less to overcome injustice. Indeed, it is a sign of what should not be and of what should not be done. We must turn this sinful history upside down, and out of poverty, we must build civilization in which all can have life and dignity.
Father John Sobrino, one of the Jesuits who lived at the UCA, but who was away on that fateful night, said, "Where then is the hope? Precisely in those who remember the witness of the martyrs and take it to heart, bearing the cross they bore and struggling as they did to create a world in which the poor have life and dignity. Remembering them exhorts us to live more for one another and provokes us to a commitment to truth, peace, and justice. It compels us to be more human, más humanos."
Thank you. Thank you all for that. That was so wonderful. And very moving, and a real tribute to the martyrs here on the death of their anniversary. I'm sure the rest of the panelists and the attendees want to join us in really showing our appreciation. Thanks so much. And now we're just going to have a brief question and answer session. And I want to begin by asking the students a question. And then, Joe, I want you to have looked at the chat questions and figure out a response to a few of those questions. So would any students like to share your experience, please?
I read the part of Selena, and I'm very sad to hear what this young woman had to go through with her mother.
I just thought, because prior to kind of reading the script and learning about this situation, I didn't have a whole lot of information, but I thought it was sad and like interesting how like, although we all read different parts and although all our different characters may not have known each other, they all were doing like humanitarian work for the good of the people, and all of them ended up like, or the majority of them ended up like dying in the tragedy.
I think it's very eye-opening because, like Paige said, I didn't really know much about this situation either. And I think it's good because now all of us have learned about it and we can tell our friends and like spread the word about what happened?
Just find it very sad that the US's involvement in this country was more harmful than helpful.
I think it was a very impactful experience, and I am very thankful to have been a part of it.
One of the things that I took away from it was that I really found it interesting that a lot of these people were just expressing their ideas, and for that reason they were killed, or they were a witness to that ideology being taught. I think it's really interesting how particularly Martín Baró talked about liberation psychology and about just expressing ideas about humanity was what ended up getting him killed. I find that kind of a very ironic situation considering the circumstances, but a very tragic one at that.
Oh, Elisabet, can we hear you?
What I took from this is that especially from our part, it says that he wasn't going to leave, and I find it very interesting that many people during these times decide to just leave, and he kind of decided just to stay and make a change. But it's very unfortunate what they had to go through because they're very impressive people who studied a lot and got killed because of this.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Now, because of the time, I just want to put one question to Father Joe. And after that, we want to turn to our next speakers. Are you hearing an echo when I speak? No, it's okay. So we happen to have two Dr. Carmonas at our university, and the other Dr. Carmona, Victor, asks you, the U.S. role in the Salvadoran Civil War contributed to the martyrdom of many, extending well beyond the UCA. Given the hurtful U.S. action toward immigrants from Northern Triangle countries, why is solidarity such a difficult lesson for the U.S.? And why is the developing world tasked as teacher to the developed?
Well, it's true. I mean, I mentioned that this U.S. involvement, U.S. complicity in the murders, the repression, the state of siege, the killing of the Jesuits and the two women at the, that was not peculiar to El Salvador. I think it's important to study the whole pattern of U.S. involvement in so-called third world countries. The same would be true in Vietnam, but especially in Latin America. You see, U.S. foreign policy has always followed the interests, the economic interests of U.S. multinational corporations. They want governments that are cooperative with U.S. investments, governments that will not put too many restrictions, ecological restrictions, for instance, on U.S. mining interests and Canadian mining interests. To have it wide open, that is, to have wide open societies, so-called free societies, but free for corporations, free for corporate investment. And the U.S. Has always followed policies that will ensure that. In 1954, the U.S., and this is perfectly clear from documents, the United States government intervened in Guatemala to get rid of a democratically elected president who had started to put some restrictions, started to nationalize actually some of the operations of the United Fruit Company. The US government staged a coup and got rid of him. In Chile, the Chilean people elected a socialist government, a socialist president in the physician, Dr. Salvador Allende, the democratically elected president in 1970. The US decided to get rid of him. First, they tried to prevent his inauguration, and then the US let it be known that we would support a military coup, and it turned out to be one of the most brutal military coups in all of Latin America. It was precisely to get rid of a socialist government, because the US government has usually served the interests, the capitalist interests, let's say, especially of multinational corporations, banks, and so forth. So that's just to kind of generalize a little bit on this particular case of El Salvador. And another thing that needs to be brought out, and this gets to the point of the immigrants, there's mention of the hurtful US action toward immigrants from the Northern Triangle countries. That means the Northern Triangle of Central America. That's Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Nicaragua is not part of that. Nicaragua is sort of in the middle of Central America. But in those countries, the most astounding thing is the extortion gangs. I was in El Progreso in Honduras, and Melo, Padre Melo will be talking about this probably. I was there a couple of years ago. I used to go more often because I was investigating the case of Father Carney, who the archive is named after. But I was there, and the talk of the town, everybody was talking about the extortion gangs. And this is just in ordinary neighborhoods, just to live there. And even more if you're trying to run a little grocery store. If you don't pay the gang, the criminal gang, what they call a tax, you can be killed, literally killed, or some other kind of violence done to you. And young men will be dragged into the gangs. So that's why there's a tremendous upsurge in emigration from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. It's not only because of the usual things that push people out of those countries, that is hunger, starvation, lack of medical care, unemployment. That's been going on for decades. But the newer thing is the violence of the gangs. There's no, and people cannot appeal to their government or to their police because they're convinced that the police are involved in it. So I think that's important for somehow to bring that out. Now, I think the US government has decided, at least what is now, thanks be to God, the outgoing administration, that they have not recognized that as a legitimate reason to seek asylum in the US. That is, they don't recognize that gang violence as a sufficient reason for somebody to leave and to seek asylum in the US. And I hope that will change, because they're fleeing from murder, basically.
Thanks so much for replying to that question. It's a big question, and you've raised a lot of contemporary issues. And I think our next three speakers are going to talk more about the contemporary challenges in Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, and El Salvador. So I want to introduce you now to Jose Artiga. He will then speak to us and introduce our next two speakers, Padre Melo and Amy Argenal. So it's a real treat to have Jose here with us. He's a longtime activist. He's been director of SHARE since 1995. He has brought over 10,000 people from the US to El Salvador and Honduras on delegations. So this is one way we can really get to know each other and to experience that solidarity that we need to act on. And actually, Jose was one of the early sanctuary persons. He took sanctuary in 1982 at the University Lutheran Chapel of the University of California, Berkeley. And so he played a pivotal role in the history of our sanctuary movement, which is still going on now and still needed now. He's also been involved in co-founding the Romero Foundation, and he's also involved in the Aquino Foundation, which advocates for the rights of families of the disappeared in El Salvador. So please, everybody, welcome Jose Artiga. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with us, especially the students. Thank you for being part of this celebration. 31 years ago, some of you maybe were not alive when Elba and Selena and the Jesuits were killed. I will be short because I would rather give my time to Father Melo, but I want to say that remember the caravans of the 2018-19, where large numbers of people were coming from Central America, many of them from Honduras, and they were leaving because the conditions were difficult. You might say, how more difficult can it become? It's like, before Trump, how right can this country go? I mean, we couldn't believe it, and we went further to the right. So after, that condition was difficult, COVID-19 hit. And it didn't hit the same way that it did here in the United States, in the sense that people were physically locked in their homes and they were not able to get their income from the informal economy. Many months went by, many just physically couldn't endure it anymore, and their relatives are dying in the meantime. And then on top of that, we have hurricanes, Eta and Iota, that is about to hit this afternoon. And then the question is, how much can you endure? How much your body, can endure when you are being pressed, when you are being cornered, when you are physically being challenged in this way? People are very creative, but it has a limit. And that's when I believe that we need to increase our solidarity, to walk with them and to tell them. So perhaps the first thing that we are inviting people to do is to send a message of support. We can easily read those messages in Radio Progreso in Honduras or in El Salvador, and tell them that you are not alone, that our prayers are with you, and that will be the first thing we can do. Second, and I know that this is difficult, is to physically go to Central America. And I know that it's not difficult, it's not as easy as it used to be, but we will organize a delegation next May to be with families. And because some of you, we know you cannot go, the delegation will be virtually transmitted. So you can join the delegation via Twitter, via Instagram, via Facebook, via Zoom, and you will be part of that delegation. That will be going in May. And we hope that some of the students and some of you present here will help organize. And then the last point is we must reach out to our friends and invite them to make a donation to accompany our friends in Central America. Amy will talk more about that, but this is the time in which we might give up a little bit of gifts for the holiday season and dedicate and make an effort, make a sacrifice in reaching out to our friends and challenge ourselves and say, if the governments are not able to come through, can the solidarity be present with our friends? These are the people that we have been working with in El Salvador, in Honduras, in Nicaragua, in Guatemala, and this is the time to be with them. With that, I want to invite Father Melo that represent many people. He will be the first one to say that this has been done in a team of many people that have put themselves in function of saving lives. You know, like as we speak this afternoon, they have been looking for shelters to take people out of danger and see if we can save their lives, you know, because we will be able to rebuild later on, but we need to first be safe as the storm hit. And Father Melo and the team of the radio and Eric has been an inspiration. Young people that, you know, are, you know, walking with the people of God. So I want to bring Father Melo, and then I will be doing the translation. Father Melo, si se puede incorporar, si puede quitar el mute, el silencio de su micrófono, y empezamos.
Hola, Pepe. Hola, amigas y amigos.
Greetings, friends.
Les mando un saludo, un abrazo desde aquí, desde Honduras.
I send you an embrace from Honduras.
Estamos en un ambiente de mucha expectativa de sus obras. Alguna gente con bastante miedo y también hay algún pánico en la sociedad hondureña.
We are living a very stressful moment, you know, with fear, with panic, as the uncertainty of the hurricanes approaches.
En ese ambiente es que yo expreso mis palabras con ustedes y saludo especialmente a Joseph Mulligan.
This is the context in which I'm sending my greetings, especially greetings to Joe Mulligan.
No le pasan los años a Mulligan.
Mulligan looks very young. The years don't go through him.
Vamos a platicar en lo posible con brevedad sobre lo que nosotros llamamos aquí el programa Vamos a la Milpa.
I want to talk briefly about what we are calling Vamos a la Milpa.
Y lo hacemos en el contexto de la memoria de nuestros hermanos y hermanas mártires.
And we do it in the context of our brothers and sisters martyrs.
A los 8 hermanos, los 6 jesuitas y Elba y Celina, a quienes yo conocí personalmente y con varios de ellos conviví por varios años.
To Elba and Celina and the 6 Jesuits, which I got to know them and I got to work with them in El Salvador.
Y cuyo asesinato fue sin duda uno de los golpes más fuertes que yo personalmente he recibido a lo largo de mi vida y que han sido muchos golpes.
Their assassination was one of the strongest hit in my life. I have received many, but this was the strongest I ever lived.
Nunca olvidaré que Elba y Celina iban a pasar las Navidades de ese año que las asesinaron.
I remember how Elba and Celina were going to have a joint holiday season with us that year.
Entonces, con su memoria y su fuerza, quiero compartir esta propuesta que tenemos desde aquí de Honduras, pero también enlazados con ustedes en Estados Unidos.
So with their memory and with their strength, I want to present this proposal that we have developed here in Honduras in collaboration with you in the United States.
Bueno, entonces nosotros hemos platicado que las propuestas que estamos trabajando se sitúan en un contexto de pandemia y de huracanes.
So this proposal is in the context of the pandemic and hurricanes.
Y nosotros estamos convencidos que tanto la pandemia como los huracanes no son en absoluto un castigo de Dios.
We are convinced that both the pandemic and the hurricanes is not a punishment from God. It's not.
Sino son realidades que vienen a desnudar nuestras responsabilidades personales, sociales y estructurales.
But perhaps are phenomena that come to unearth the injustice of people, of governments that we're living.
Y más que a crear nuevos problemas que los crean, vienen a desnudar antiguos problemas en la sociedad.
Not only to bring new problems, but to make visible the deeper problems that we have been living.
Yo quiero decir que tanto la pandemia como estos huracanes vienen a desnudarnos una crisis en sus tres vertientes.
I want to point out that the pandemic and the hurricanes come to make visible the problems in three areas.
La primera vertiente de la crisis es que ha venido a desnudar un modelo productor de desigualdades.
The first one is that this pandemic and the hurricanes come to make visible a program of inequalities that we're living.
El asunto de países como Honduras, pero también de Centroamérica, no es un problema de pobreza, sino que de distribución injusta de la riqueza.
It's not a matter of poverty, it's a matter of unequal distribution of wealth.
La segunda vertiente de la crisis es el deterioro del ambiente y de la ecología.
The second source of the crisis is the deterioration of the environment and the economy.
Por ejemplo, los desastres que se vienen con los huracanes no es ni porque Dios lo quiere, ni por resultado de un fenómeno natural, sino consecuencia de el modo como nos organizamos frente a los huracanes.
So the hurricanes and the pandemic expose the way we organize this event, how we face them.
El maltrato de la naturaleza después se cobra con estas situaciones que ocurren con los huracanes.
Of course, how we're treating nature charges, when these disasters hit.
Y vamos a mayor degradación ambiental y ecológica.
And we are moving towards a greater destruction, a greater deterioration of the environment.
Y la tercera vertiente de la crisis es la vertiente política de deterioro de la democracia y a avanzar hacia políticas de autoritarismos.
The third source is the political situation where we are suffering a deterioration of democracy and deterioration of the political entities.
Esto lo hemos vivido en Centroamérica, pero también ustedes lo han vivido con Trump.
We are living it here in Central America, but also you have been living it under the Trump administration.
Frente a esas tres vertientes de crisis, nosotros proponemos y hacemos una propuesta que le llamamos Vamos a la Milpa.
Vis-a-vis those three sources of the crisis, we are proposing what we are calling Vamos a la Milpa.
¿Qué significa esta propuesta de Vamos a la Milpa?
What does it mean, Vamos a la Milpa?
Primero, es una buena noticia para los pobres y desde su fuerza creativa.
So first is good news. It's good news for the poor because it involves their creative energies, their creative ideas.
No nos quedamos solamente en la crítica, sino en la propuesta.
We are not only criticizing, but now we are proposing an alternative.
Es también una propuesta antineoliberal y contracultural.
It's also a proposal against the neoliberal system and against the current culture on values.
Es una propuesta agroecológica, comunitaria, inserta en la tierra y articuladora de lo rural con lo urbano.
It's a proposal, agroecological proposal that coordinates between the rural and the urban sector.
Es productiva y comercializadora a partir de la soberanía alimentaria.
It produces food and promotes food sovereignty.
Es popular, pero anclada y anclada también en los territorios.
It's popular and is rooted in the communities.
Es una apuesta por la soberanía de los pueblos.
We are betting on sovereignty.
Y es solidaridad entre los pueblos a partir del amor a la tierra.
And it's solidarity amongst people based on love for the land.
Por eso es una propuesta en positivo.
So that's why I emphasize that it's a positive proposal.
Pero es una propuesta que demanda respuestas comprometidas.
It also demands very concrete answers.
Por ejemplo, que no se reduzca a campañas electorales.
For instance, this should not be limited to electoral campaigns.
Que no se reduzca a lo individualismo.
It shouldn't be reduced to the individual benefit.
Que no se reduzca solo en una organización.
And it should not include only one organization.
Que no se reduzca en acentuar lo negativo.
It shouldn't emphasize only on the negatives.
Por eso quiero yo destacar las condiciones mínimas para que la Milpa, la propuesta de Vamos a la Milpa no naufrague.
That's what I want to list, the minimum conditions, so this proposal doesn't go under and it has success.
Una primera condición.
First,
que sea apropiada en el corazón por parte de quienes la impulsan.
This proposal has to be embraced in the heart of the people that promote it.
Una propuesta así, audaz y en medio de tantas negatividades, solo podrá sobrevivir entre aquella gente que la aman y que la consideran parte de su vida.
It will only succeed if it's promoted by people that have deep love for the land.
Lo que no se ama o no se tiene por conveniencia o cálculo no podrá sobrevivir en Honduras y en Centroamérica.
Something that is not loved will not succeed in Honduras or in Central America. You must love it.
Segunda condición.
Second
confianza en organizaciones y en quienes las integran.
Trust in the organizations and the individuals that promote this proposal.
Confianza más allá de cálculos.
Trust beyond, mathematical, equation.
Confianza más allá de sospechas o de intereses políticos o de grupos.
Trust beyond political interest.
Tercera condición.
Third condition.
Cohesión y articulación interna entre las organizaciones que la impulsan.
Cohesion and the building of a large coalition of the organizations that will promote it.
Y una preferencia especial entre las muchas tareas y demandas que cada organización y personas tengan.
And of course, the preferential promotion of the organizations that will promote this Vamos a la Milpa.
Si José y yo, si ustedes y nosotros no la ponemos como una preferencia especial, Vamos a la Milpa no va a resultar.
If Jose and I and you and us don't make this a priority to move it forward, it will not succeed.
Cuarta condición.
Fourth condition.
Que tengamos resultados visibles.
That we have visible results. And, results that we can touch.
Vamos a la Milpa debe ser un programa que en todo el tiempo, pero especialmente en el primer tiempo de implantación, deberá dar frutos.
Vamos a la Milpa has to produce results, has to produce fruits.
Producir alimentos que la gente saboree.
Produce food that people can flavor, can touch.
Que los frutos los comencemos a ver desde la primera etapa.
That we see these fruits in the very first phase of the campaign.
Para que la gente crea y se entusiasme.
So people will believe and get enthusiastic about it.
Quinta condición.
Fifth condition.
Evitar que el programa Vamos a la Milpa se deje atrapar como un proyecto de la cooperación.
Avoid that Vamos a la Milpa becomes a project of solidarity.
Bienvenidos los aportes y donaciones de amigos y de amigas de la cooperación, pero como miembros de la Milpa y no solamente que están desde arriba dando tareas e impulsando compromisos desde arriba.
Solidarity is welcome, but they need to be part of the production, part of us.
Bienvenida a la cooperación internacional, pero como parte de la Milpa, no como gestores externos.
Welcome the solidarity, the cooperation, but not from above, imposing it, but from within.
Sexta condición.
Sixth condition.
Que haya experiencias territoriales pequeñas como modelo.
That we have experiences that we can show in particular areas of the country.
Que en cada comunidad, en cada sector, hayan pequeñas experiencias como modelo.
That in each community there are examples that they can share as success stories.
Acompañada de una campaña permanente de sensibilización y mentalización de la sociedad.
And this to be accompanied by an ongoing social media campaign to educate others about it.
Para que mucha más gente de la que integra la organización de Vamos a la Milpa acabe interesada y preocupada realizando pequeñas parcelas desde la perspectiva y la mística de Vamos a la Milpa.
In order for more and more people to join and start planting their own plots and produce food themselves.
Es decir, que Vamos a la Milpa logre penetrar en la mente y en el corazón de muchos sectores de la sociedad.
The idea is that Vamos a la Milpa will get into the hearts and minds of many people in society.
Condición número 7.
And number 7, the condition number 7.
Formación y profundización en torno a los valores de Vamos a la Milpa al interior de las organizaciones que la integran.
Education and training about the values of Vamos a la Milpa within the organizations that are part of it.
¿Qué valores?
What values?
Amor a la tierra.
Love to the land.
La comunidad.
Community, love to community.
Por encima de los individualismos.
Love to community above the individualism.
Solidaridad y compromiso.
Solidarity and commitment.
Por encima del acaparamiento.
Above, the selfishness of...
Justicia y dignidad por encima de el control y la opresión.
Justice and dignity above the control, the value of control.
Defensa de la tierra.
Defending of the land.
Defensa de todos los bienes de la naturaleza.
defending all the components of nature.
Y defensa de los derechos de las víctimas.
And defending the rights of the victims.
Condición número 8.
Number 8.
Permanente apertura.
Openness.
Para que siempre otras organizaciones nacionales e internacionales se puedan integrar cuando lo conozcan y cuando quieran.
In order for more national and international organizations can join anytime they want.
Que Vamos a la Milpa sea un lugar de encuentro.
That Vamos a la Milpa becomes a space to get together.
Siempre con las puertas abiertas.
Always with open doors.
Y la condición número 9.
And condition number 9.
Siempre celebrar la vida.
Always celebrate life.
En cualquier circunstancia.
In any circumstance.
Pero especialmente en las más difíciles o áridas.
But especially under the most difficult conditions.
Que le pongamos el toque de fiesta.
That we put the touch of celebration, of party.
Que celebremos elotadas.
That we celebrate the harvest of the corn.
Atoladas.
Different atoles that we will produce from corn.
Frijoladas.
Bean soups.
Organizar mercados populares.
Organize community markets.
Fiestas religiosas.
Religious celebrations.
Memoria de los mártires.
And remember our martyrs.
Y la fiesta de la recuperación de la tierra y de la ecología.
And the big celebration of the recuperation of our Mother Earth and the agroecology.
Y como nos recuerda nuestro mártir, el Padre Rutilio Grande,
as Father Rutilio Grande, our martyr, reminds us,
Vamos a la Milpa es la historización de lo que él dijo de una manera tan sencilla.
He said it in a very simple terms, what Vamos a la Milpa means.
Nos salvamos en racimo, nos salvamos en comunidad.
We save ourselves in cluster, we save ourselves in community.
Bueno, eso es lo que, en resumen, quiero compartir con ustedes, hermanas y hermanos.
That's the summary of what I wanted to share with you, sisters and brothers.
Pues no sé, José, si ahora hay preguntas o
quizás explicar qué es la milpa. ¿Qué sembramos en la milpa? What do we plant on that milpa?
Bueno, pues mira, la milpa es lo que ya dije en este momento, pero se concreta en la organización que en torno a la tierra.
The milpa is the organization around land.
Va a sembrar para producir todo lo que la tierra puede darnos.
And it will plant everything that we need, everything that the land can provide us.
Desde el maíz y los frijoles.
From the corn and beans.
Hasta las hortalizas.
To the vegetables.
Pero también árboles frutales.
Fruit trees.
Y árboles maderables.
Trees that can produce wood as well.
Y que esto nosotros lo hagamos en comunidad, en grupo, en colectivo.
And that we can do this in community, in collective.
Y desde ahí, digamos, defendemos la milpa.
And that's how we defend the milpa.
Bueno, sembramos la milpa, defendemos la milpa. Compartimos la milpa.
We defend the milpa. We share the milpa.
Y nos solidarizamos con la milpa.
And we are in solidarity with the milpa.
que es una manera de decir que defendemos la tierra y defendemos a quienes producen la tierra y luchamos por la transformación de la agraria para que la tierra sea de todo el mundo.
In a way, it's defending the land and the ones that produce the land. It's like an agrarian reform. Can we take maybe a question or two because both Father Melo and I will need to go to a program that starts in a few minutes, and then we can continue with Amy.
Okay, that wasn't the original plan, but as long as Amy's okay with it. And please, audience, remember, stick around for Amy's talk, but let's have one or two questions for Padre Melo just now.
Vamos a ver si hay un par de preguntas antes de que se vaya.
There's a question from Victor Carmona. Victor, do you want to ask your question yourself? If so, I could unmute you.
Okay.
Hi, yes. I wrote my question in Spanish. Sorry, we have an echo.
Jose, maybe you want to read the question again?
Aquí está la pregunta de Víctor. Víctor dice, Padre Melo, muchas gracias. Tengo una pregunta. ¿Qué papel jugarán las universidades ya que el cambio climático está cambiando el rango de muchos cultivos tradicionales? ¿Qué papel van a jugar las universidades?
Una pregunta.
What role will the universities play?
Una pregunta sumamente valiosa.
It's a very valuable question, Víctor.
Porque Vamos a la Milpa es un programa integral.
Vamos a la Milpa es an integral program.
Que necesariamente tiene que tener articulaciones muy importantes con diversos sectores, en este caso académicos y universitarios.
It needs to have a collaboration and coordination with many sectors and of course the universities.
Al menos en 3 campos.
Perhaps in three areas at least.
Primero.
1.
En propuestas de agricultura.
Agricultural proposals.
Para que estén de acuerdo con la fertilidad de la tierra y con el cuidado de la tierra.
In order to be in tune with the fertility of the land and how to take care of the land.
¿Qué sembrar hoy en este tiempo que esté en armonía con la tierra y con los hombres y las mujeres que están sembrando la tierra?
What to plant in this time that will be in harmony with Mother Earth.
Segundo.
Second.
Desde las universidades, ¿cómo contribuir?
From universities, how to contribute.
En propuestas de reordenamiento agrario para que defienda el derecho de los campesinos a la tierra.
To rearrange the priorities in order to defend and incorporate the farmers in this proposal.
Y tercero.
And third.
¿Cómo vincular el campo con el empleo y la producción la producción industrial en las ciudades?
How to coordinate the countryside with the city and in the incorporation of the industrial production.
Entonces, vincular el campo con la ciudad desde la producción. Propuestas agrarias y propuestas productivas que respeten la armonía entre los seres humanos y la tierra. Creo que son 3 maneras en que las universidades pueden respaldar y estar articulados con Vamos a la Milpa.
So the universities can help in these 3 points, articulating, the rural with the city, how to respect the earth and the farmers.
Gracias, Víctor Carmona.
Sí, hay un par de preguntas más aquí. How are we doing with time, Gail?
Well, as long as Amy is okay and she can stay a little later, then you can still take 1 or 2 more questions. It looks like people want to know how they can get involved in helping. And then,
yeah. One of the questions is from Matthew. What kinds of efforts are underway right now to recover from hurricanes, and how can we support?
¿Qué esfuerzos se están llevando a cabo relativos al huracán y cómo podemos apoyar?
También muchas gracias por la pregunta.
Thank you for your question.
Bien, en este momento no hemos salido de la emergencia en absoluto del huracán Eta y en este momento estamos muy preocupados con la llegada del huracán Iota, que es de categoría 5.
We have not finished, getting out of Hurricane Eta when we are receiving a more powerful level 5 Iota hurricane. We are very concerned.
Después de el paso trágico de este segundo huracán y además se anuncia un tercero, tenemos que prepararnos para un largo tiempo de emergencia que tiene que ver después con la rehabilitación y posteriormente con la reconstrucción. Y esto lo vamos a situar en el marco de Vamos a la Milpa.
This is going to be a long period. We are already getting news of a 3rd hurricane that might be coming after Iota. So we need to see the recuperation, the immediate recuperation, and then plan for the long run.
Entonces vamos a la milpa, es decir, nosotros tenemos que tener claro, primero, que en este momento tenemos que apoyar con recursos y con servicios materiales para atender a los miles de damnificados que vamos a tener en esta zona. Primera cosa.
So the first phase is to take care of the thousands of people affected by both hurricanes, the immediate needs of people.
Después de un tiempo, esto nos va a llevar ciertamente el resto del año.
That will take us several months, perhaps, the rest of the year.
Y seguramente al menos el primer mes del año 2021.
And for sure into 2021.
Después tenemos que entrar en una segunda fase, que es la rehabilitación.
They will move into the second phase of rehabilitation.
Que tiene que ver con la limpieza de los hogares, de las viviendas que hayan quedado.
To start the cleaning of the homes, of the houses that will be still standing.
Ver qué es lo que se puede recuperar de los cultivos.
See what we can recuperate, from the crops.
Y tener una campaña profunda de consuelo, de esperanza y de apoyo espiritual a los miles de damnificados.
And to have a campaign of support, including the spiritual support to the victims.
Aquí es donde, por ejemplo, podemos organizar brigadas de limpieza de hogares, de recuperación de cultivos, de estar cerca de los damnificados, dentro de lo que se puede y guardando las medidas de bioseguridad porque seguimos en pandemia.
So, for instance, one idea will be to organize brigades, groups of people that go and help the community, of course, taking care of the pandemic protocols, so because we're still under COVID-19.
Y luego, para poner un tiempo, para a partir de mediados del año 2021, iniciar la tercera etapa de reconstrucción.
In the middle of 2021, start the third phase of reconstruction.
Que en el caso nuestro tiene que ver con apoyo a cultivos, tiene que ver con apoyo a viviendas en lo que se pueda también.
That will include, support for planting as well as rebuilding the homes of the people.
Y en la organización de la población para que tome sus propias decisiones.
And focus also on the organization of the people so they take their own decisions.
Es decir, tenemos que prepararnos para un plan a corto, mediano y largo plazo.
So this is a plan that will have a short, medium, and long range plan.
I see we have if you can you do one more question, maybe from Janet Ray?
Sure, go ahead.
And Janet, I'll unmute you if you'd like to ask your question.
Hay otra pregunta de Janet Ray, de Parroquia Madre de los Pobres. Vamos, Janet.
Hombre, Janet, mucho gusto.
Padre Melo, ¿cómo estamos?
Janet, mucho gusto. Mi abrazo, todo mi cariño, mi recuerdo.
Sí,
me recuerdo que en el 86 estuvimos jalando sacos, cargando sacos para los damnificados de aquel entonces del terremoto.
I remember you in 86 when we were supporting the victims of the earthquake in El Salvador.
Pues Melo's a dear friend of mine. He was a Jesuit, I think he was a novitiate. He was very young in his Jesuit career when I met Melo.
Estaba muy joven cuando lo conocí allá en El Salvador. Era novicio, dice.
Yeah,
y tenía mucha fuerza yo.
Yeah,
I was much stronger then.
Yeah, no, well, and years have not affected him at all. He's very handsome and very young always.
Siempre muy guapo y con mucha energía, lo vemos desde acá, dice.
Yep. So, go ahead, Melo.
Veo que ha perdido la vista.
Yeah, yeah. So, but even my sight, mi vista siempre es que sos guapo y que trabajo mucho en lo que los dones que nos da Dios. So God gives us our sight and our intelligence, and so we use them what we can.
Mi vista es que siempre sigue comprometido con el pueblo de Dios.
Exactamente.
Bendito sea Dios, es un regalo.
Yep. So Melo, I had a question about gangs and security, but I really want to ask him about his personal faith. Melo, in this time, what gives you joy? I'll say it in Spanish. Melo, iba a hablar sobre la seguridad, las maras y la situación pública de seguridad, pero mi pregunta es eso, más personal, más de su fe. ¿Qué en este momento le da alegría y que le da más fuerza a tu fe?
Bueno, mira, Janet, el saber que la vida está por encima de tantos destrozos y que
know that life is above all the destruction that we are facing.
Y las muestras de vida que uno ve en tanta gente damnificada, para mí eso da un gran sentido a la vida y alegría para seguir trabajando.
And to see the many examples of how poor people face this situation with joy, that's what it gives me hope to continue forward.
Entonces, seguir cerca de la gente para mí es fundamental.
Exactamente.
To be very close to the people for me is fundamental.
Yo tengo que aceptar que yo he perdido muchas fuerzas y que tengo una enfermedad autoinmune que a veces me traiciona.
I need to accept that I'm older and that I have an immune situation that sometimes the strength is not the one that I wish to have.
Pero siento la necesidad la otra semana de irme a vivir a un albergue porque necesito estar cerca de la gente y alimentarme de su esperanza.
But next week, I will physically go and live in a shelter to receive the energy and the hope of the people.
Yo sé que yo no tengo, es solo a ustedes lo digo porque si lo digo aquí, mis compañeros y van a creer que estoy loco, pero yo necesito la cercanía con la gente que más está sufriendo la situación de damnificados.
I tell you this to you because I know when my team learns about this, will think that I'm crazy, but I do need the energy and the hope of the people.
Y eso es fuente de esperanza para mí, Janet.
And that's a source of hope for me, Janet.
Me alegro, Melo, porque es una respuesta muy correcta. Pues eso es lo que nos enseñó Padre Daniel y Niña Zoila y pues las mártires y pues sí, eso nos da la fuerza y pues la sonrisa también con los
That's
niños.
what we learned in El Salvador with Father Daniel, of being with the people that give us joy and be able to laugh and continue. All right, I think
thank you both. Thank you so much, Padre Melo, for being with us all the way in Honduras. We are concerned for you and all the Hondurans as you face this hurricane, and we will be praying for you to give you strength, and we are appreciative to you for the hope and inspiration that you give us. And Jose, thank you so much.
Estamos enviándole nuestras oraciones y vamos a estar pendientes de la situación en Honduras. So we're going to continue with Amy, who is one of the pillars of Vamos a la Milpa here in the United States. Vamos a continuar con Amy, que es uno de los pilares de Vamos a la Milpa. Adelante, Amy, acá en San Francisco, California.
Hello, everybody. Gracias, Padre Melo. Estoy contigo.
Hola.
Jose, maybe you can translate for Padre Melo later, because this is a message to him as well. I'm going to say it in English for our guests, but I hope that Padre Melo, maybe I will deliver to you in Español. Más tarde te he escrito todo. It's a real honor for me to be here because it's allowing me to both bring my faith from the abstract into this celebration and to actually walk alongside Padre Melo. And so this last question, when you asked about the faith and the joy and the hope, for me in meeting Padre Melo, this is where I was actually able to take the legacies of the martyrs that I had learned in all of my Catholic studies, a product of Jesuit education, and also the granddaughters of Nicaraguenses, right? So these legacies of the martyrs have always been in my blood, but they were abstract. They were something that was there for me, these visions of justice, but they were abstract because I was here in the Bay Area growing up, third generation San Franciscan. And it was in 2015 when I went to Honduras and I met Padre Melo and I visited Radio Progreso and Eric and the team of these amazing investigative journalists who are walking in solidarity with communities. And in 2015, I visited for the first time the Garifuna community, right? And in June, 5 of their leaders have disappeared. But Padre Melo and his team were walking with the Garifuna, trying to amplify their voice. I returned to Honduras in 2019 and got to visit Guapinol, another community that Radio Progreso and Padre Melo and Eric are working to support, along with the Comité and Fundación San Alonso, of these water defenders, a community defending the river. And again, it is Padre Melo putting his team, putting their lives to walk with people who could walk with communities that are committed to survival and resistance. And for me, this is where my faith actually flourished. It was something abstract and now which I could actually bring to the personal. And I know that now I had my own role in this, and it was to walk in solidarity with the people of Honduras, with the communities that I met, and with the work that Padre Melo is talking about, which now is Vamos a la Milpa. And so at the start of this, when Father Mulligan talked about why we celebrate the martyrs, because of love, courage, and commitment, This, for me, is what this work means now. And it is why I follow Padre Melo, because I watch in his work, I witness in his work, love, courage, and commitment. And Vamos a la Milpa, this next campaign, this is what it is. It's continuing a deep commitment to solidarity with communities. It is a reimagining, right? It is a reimagining of the world that as it needs to be and what we see right now. So now more than ever, we need to reimagine what our world can become. And Arundhati Roy writes about the pandemic as a portal, but now we see both pandemic and hurricane as a portal, right? Vamos a la Milpa is a new way for us to walk through this portal into a world in which communities can live in dignity, in which communities can have their own say, sovereignty over what the life of the community should look like. And just as they say, it's communities that will save themselves. And so for me, my role now is to walk with these communities. And Vamos a la Milpa is a way that I can do that. So as we think about this devastating storms, 1, 2, 3, Eta, Iota, and maybe a third, right? I actually reminded both natural disasters, but also climate crisis that we ourselves are all implicated in, and government neglect and actual government harm, right? In the ways in which the Honduran government has abandoned people. So for example, under Eta, the floodgates were opened and the government didn't let people know. And so you had communities that were flooded, the market in Tegucigalpa that was flooded. And so it's also holding governments accountable, right? We know that the climate crisis and the pandemic are connected. And so we must take our step into this portal, into a new imagination. And so what I think about is, I think about an example from Puerto Rico. After Hurricane Maria, Naomi Klein did this excellent expose in which she visited communities in Puerto Rico that were these, what she calls islands of hope. One was a solar, it was Casa El Pueblo, I think was the name. And I'll post the link to her work in the chat room, in which it was this solar place and people could come and charge their phones and connect with each other to rebuild. But the second was in looking at small agricultural sustainable farms. And they were the first that were up and running and were able to provide food for communities that were devastated by Hurricane Maria. And so as I think about Vamos a la Milpa, I think about the possibility in terms of what does reconstruction look like now? So I think, you know, like Jose said in the beginning, and I just wanted to keep it as short as possible and just share what it means to walk in solidarity. For me, it means connection to people. It means being in relationships. And so at all costs, what does it mean to actually go? For me, when I went to Honduras, it deeply changed my narrative of abstract liberation theology to work in movements, in relationship with people that I text and call and want to know how they're doing. I ask, what is my role right now under ETA? What are we supposed to be doing, right? How can I send money? Who do we send money to? These are the questions that when you're in relationship with the community, you know those answers to those because you have somebody in which you're deeply connected to. The other is how can we send money, right? So Vamos a la Milpa USA is this long-term project, but SHARE El Salvador right now is arranging to send money to organizations that are on the ground doing the rescue work. And so we can share a link for SHARE El Salvador, but they have a constant campaign to raise money to help with this immediate need, right? 2 million people will be affected by ETA and now with a new storm coming. And so there is a need for aid. And the aid does not need to go to the Honduran government. It needs to go to communities on the ground that are doing this work. And so this is the second. And the third that Jose talked about, which I deeply connect with, is these messages of support, that we are here, that we are listening, and that we want to engage, right? And build, because we know that our humanity is also deeply tied to humanity from all around the world. So for me, even though I'm Central American, I know that my humanity is deeply tied to communities that are struggling for their right to live, their right to survive, and their right to thrive. And so it is with honor that I share this. I run through. I am available to help answer questions. And I will post some of the links in the room about Vamos a la Milpa, but also SHARE El Salvador. In terms of immediate aid to Central America, we can donate through SHARE El Salvador, which is where Jose Artiga was speaking to us from. So thank you so much. Padre Melo, muchísimas gracias para estar con nosotros y para compartir todas sus palabras. Padre Melo, thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing your words. Eres una inspiración para mí y yo camino siempre a tu lado. And thank you so much to the university for having this event.
Gracias.
Thank you so much, Amy, for those words of inspiration. And you've got us all on fire. And I've put the Vamos a la Milpa link in the chat. And at this point, I think we are over time. So chances are it's not a good time to start answering more questions. But if either Padre Melo or Joe or you want to have any last word before we say goodbye to everybody, you are welcome. Okay.
Yo estoy satisfecho, contento.
Okay, thank you so much. And Joe,
Well,
thank you also so much.
I just wanted to say hi to Melo up there in our neighboring country up north of here. And again, I just think that we've talked about a lot, but the specific down-to-earth concrete projects are what count, you know, in real life, very practical kinds of things that we need to do.
Yes. And so if you're interested in something concrete and practical, you just get a hold of Jose Artiga, SHARE El Salvador. He's working with Padre Melo, and then you can feel that, yes, you can be of use and we can get this work done together in solidarity across borders. And that's what CLASA is all about, Carney Latin American Solidarity Archive. Jim Carney's work, we remember him and we try to continue his concern for peace and justice. So many of you have been so good to stay over time and join us. But at this point, I just want to thank you for being with us. Please join us again. You'll see as you leave, you'll have an opportunity to sign up for CLASA's email list, for SHARE's email list. We'll be happy to stay in touch with you. And we do have programming next academic year. We always have a great UCA Jesuit Martyrs fundraiser. So please stay in touch with us. And thank you again to all of our presenters and all of our attendees. Thank you very much. And we continue to be with you in spirit, even after this Zoom is over. Thank you again so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Gil. This was very fantastic. Gracias. Era muy fantástico y que vive la solidaridad.
Bueno, adiós, mucho gusto, mucho gusto.
Gracias. Gracias.